Hey, Pastor with No Answers listeners. Most of you know a few episodes ago, I interviewed John Schneider of Dukes of Hazzard, a show that I watched as a kid, and it was like living a dream, a childhood dream, talking to this guy. What a remarkable man. What he's done with his life and what he's still doing was such a treat. Near the end of that conversation, we had some disagreements on racial equality, and you know what? It just wasn't the purpose of that conversation to really get into it. But he said some things that I disagreed with, and I probably said some things that he disagreed with as well. So what I wanted to do is ask my friend Robbie Madison, who is a black male, I asked him to listen to that conversation and give us or give me some feedback. That conversation will air next week on Pastor with No Answers, but I want to give you a quick snapshot right now.
And you think about that, and you think about your grandmother, and you think about your grandfather, and all those things, and think about your grandparents in chains, not clothed, not able to see a doctor or get, normal health care or become a movie star or anything like that. Like, you think about what you think their lives should look like, or maybe the romanticized view of what we think their lives looked like, and then you replace that with what slavery looked like. I mean, I play weddings in Charleston. One of the wedding venues that I hate playing at is Boone Hall. Why? Because they still have, slave quarters up. They still have all these monuments up, and people are celebrating and having weddings there. No black people having weddings there, I can tell you that. Pretty much immediately when I kissed her goodnight, I got flashlights shining into my car. So I put my window down because it was a police officer searching my car, leans over me and asks her if she's okay. Wow. And I'm like, this is my hometown. Asks her if she's okay,
Before we continue with our show and get to the main event with Chris Dudley from Underoath, I wanted to remind you guys that we have a Patreon membership that you can join at patreon.com/PWNApod. By the way, I'm giving away my book, Fundamentalists in Digital Form. I'm assuming most people that would be in my patron group probably they already have it. But if not, it is a book that I wrote on growing up with depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, irrational thoughts, added a dose of legalism and fundamentalism from my church upbringing, and it was a recipe for disaster. So anyone who joins the Pastor with No Answers Patreon group, you'll get that for free. And also there's some great conversations going on Marco Polo, all the way from how do you encounter God all the way to trying to make it to the bathroom and not making it in time. I wanted to also tell you that on facebook.com/PWNA Talk, we have some discussions about the topics discussed on this podcast. And I told you that I would give you an update on the latest question where I asked if calling mommy or calling God mother in addition to father was something that you liked, disliked, disagreed with. And an update on that is that 48% of you said it's harmless, doesn't matter. 28% of you said it should actually be encouraged. 17% of you said it's wrong, but it doesn't really matter. And 6% of you said it's flat out wrong and should never be done. We enjoy these conversations, so join us over at facebook.com/PWNA Talk. We'd love to have you. Now enjoy the show. Natalie, you're a hip hop fan, right?
I
know
am.
AJ is.
Yeah, we are. We as a unit.
So John and I was telling, did you just say G Unit?
Oh, I wish I had.
I was telling John that my brother and I, we came up with, we enjoy doing stuff like this. It's weird, I guess. So I guess some people are the same way, but we really enjoy the process of looking through all of our artists, the bands we've been listening to for the last 25, 30 years, and put together a top 50 list. We've already had an episode on here where we talked about our 41 through 50, and we're just kind of going to go down the line. But all the hip hop that I listened to, and I listened to a lot of underground stuff, and a lot of underground stuff made it to my top 50. But as uncool as it is, I discovered my favorite rapper is Kanye West. Like I can't deny it. Like I looked through that dude's albums, and I got to a point where I was kind of annoyed by just his excessive vulgarity. Like to me, it was just like, come on, man, just tone it down a little bit. But musically, I mean, I've got to say 3 of his albums have got to be in maybe my top 50. So there's just no denying it. I wanted to be a little, look a little cooler and maybe have the Roots ahead of that. In fact, originally I did, but I was like, gosh, I think I like Kanye West, and you've got a very disappointed look on your face. So
okay, so let's talk about Mr. West. I personally have a lot of mixed feelings about him. Because I hate how much I like him. Because I loved him, and I was like a Kanye apologist for a really long time. Because he's amazing at what he does. His production is incredible. Yeah. The man has a brilliant mind.
He single-handedly changes the rap.
Forever.
100%. Yeah.
Pero, that all being said.
Here we go. Make America great again.
Jesus is king.
Hold up.
For a lot of reasons. We're really going to have this conversation right now. Because I personally take offense when people use my belief system as a means of gaining tons of money.
You think that that's what he's doing?
Oh, what?
You think it's a money? You think it's a full-on money grab? Because I think that he could make more money creating another Life of Pablo and going on a real tour. And
so listen. No. Because that's never the way he's worked, mate. Like, anytime people assume they know what he's gonna do, he turns around and does something completely different. Like what he did with Life of Pablo. You look at what he's doing with Jesus is King, right? And I say that I'm a Kanye apologist because, like, I genuinely, like, get it to an extent. Like, I get the art portion of it. I get the idea of performance art and how, like, it's an experiment of expression. Whatever. I am, like, I genuinely, like, and this is gonna sound real silly, but I was, like, really hurt when I heard Jesus is King, because there's parts of it that are absolutely fire production-wise. Yeah. But lyrically, I listened to it, and I'm like, you're a garbage human.
Okay, so stick with me. Hold on one second. Because he
you guys are intriguing me. I want to talk, but I just got to sit back and listen.
So this
right
album
now.
specifically, I think context is important, right?
Yes.
So we talk
100%.
A lot about mental health, and rightfully so, and we should. Kanye has ongoing mental health battles on the regular. He's medicated. He's not medicated. He's medicating himself. We heard about that in his last, that 7-track record that he dropped, talking about.
Yeah,
he was talking about.
I'm bipolar.
Yeah, on that record, talking about taking experimental laboratory drugs, and like, so he's he mental health wise, he's all over the place. And so what I heard from Jesus is King is a man that has finally found a little bit of peace in his life. And it sounded to me like super early and immature, maybe, Christian speak on that record. It's very base level. Wow. It's very like, this is what the pastor told me, and I'm regurgitating it. Well, like that whole thing. That's what I heard, at least.
So here's the thing, is like, I totally see that, right? Because like, a lot of the way that he approached this album was very much like very surface level evangelical shit, right? Totally. So like the idea of like, we're not gonna have sex the whole time making this album, and like stuff like that is very premature stuff, and that is like not even my biggest gripe with it. Okay, when I say that I am frustrated with this man's like work on this, there is a line. I'm pretty sure. Yep, there's a line in the song On God. And when I heard it, I was like, and I'm done.
Okay.
Done.
Hit me.
Done with Kanye or done with the album?
Done with the album. Having a hard time letting go of old Kanye. I don't know how to feel because of the whole idea of separating the art from the artist. But on the song On God.
I mean, I still watch Cosby Show. Go ahead.
He says, what does he say? He says, here we go. The IRS want 50 plus. Want they 50 plus our tithe. Man, that's over half the pie. I felt dry. That's on God. That's why I charge the prices that I charge. I can't be out here dancing with the stars. No, I cannot let my family starve. Fam, take your ball, go home, stop it.
I completely understand that feeling and that reaction. Let me start there. It's like, I get it. He's also, again, back to mental health. He's so far removed from like regular ass people that makes sense to him in his head. Like, he also said, like, in an interview after that, God gave him a tax check for like $60 million or something. It's crazy. It's like, it always boils down to like Kanye going Kanye. You know what I mean? He's just far removed from everything and probably reality, to be fair. But
at this point, you cannot, and I'm sorry, you cannot genuinely, maybe you can. I have a hard time believing that a person can genuinely create a piece of work and a piece of art that they are claiming, like, the name of Jesus Christ, and be that far removed from reality and society and not understand that much money and the money that you charge on your shit, like, is not normal. And if Jesus Christ is all about humility,
right,
and humbling yourself, it is completely anti-gospel. I'm sorry. That is my opinion on it, because, like, I get it, and I get mental health, and I get that it's a struggle, because that man is not always on his medication. And
for sure.
like, there is art that is made from that it could be really freaking cool. But the minute it comes into the idea of, like, trying to rep what I genuinely believe in, and it coming across as, like, mega hypocritical and mega hungry and mega slimy, sorry, I'm out.
But don't you think, though, with what John's saying is, like, take someone who, let's say, has a real conversion experience with Jesus, and I think that we've probably all have seen people or maybe experienced ourselves to where it's like a complete 180.
Sure.
But I've also seen people where it's just like, did anything even happen? And bottom line, it did. And it's just a very slow work in progress. And I don't know if this was before y'all's rap listening time. You were born in 93, right, Natalie? I'm old enough to be your dad, basically.
92.
92. Okay, so if I had a kid at 15 years old, which is very plausible, then you could be my daughter. But so I don't know if y'all remember Mace, but Mace was
Murder Mace,
huge. Yeah, mid late 90s. He has a hit with Notorious B.I.G., but he released Harlem World, which is huge. He becomes so Harlem World, I think, came out in 97. He becomes a Christian and even, I think, a pastor. It puts out an album in 2004. I'm like so excited because I love Mace, and I was like, man, he put out a Christian album. This is so awesome. He still said bling type statements like money this and money that, my bank account is so, and I was like, what in the world? This doesn't sound like Jesus at all. But I was like, I'm not, and I'm not saying you are being judgmental at all. You really are making a good point. But for me, I was like, I'm not going to judge this guy. How am I supposed to know that this isn't something that he's figuring out, or maybe God hasn't brought to his attention or anything?
I'm not saying it's not genuine. I'm not saying it's not genuine, because he genuinely may believe that this is his, like, spiritual experience, and that's completely on him and on God. But like, whether or not I choose to listen to it, is up for debate.
For sure, for sure.
And I think that a good chunk of, like, so, like, for me, the idea of this man coming to terms and, like, finding peace was My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and, like, how transformative that album was for him. in where he was in his life, especially when it came to like his mental health, the media, stuff like that. And you can hear that throughout the album. You can hear the genuine like hurt and his self-discovery. And when I listen to On God, all of it just feels mega produced. It feels like a performance art piece, which isn't bad, but it's not what I signed up for.
Right. Interesting.
And John, you like the album?
I like the album. And I think that
it's really well produced.
I think I would be more. Again, completely understand Natalie's position, and like would probably be in that camp if he like didn't convert to, and I'm using air quotes because no one knows, I don't know, convert to Christianity like 30 seconds ago. So like to me,
but he didn't though, because Jesus walks though.
Yeah, but he would. But sure. I think he was trying. He really had a deep spiritual experience about 30 seconds ago, and is trying to live out.
That's fair.
And is trying to live out the life that he thinks he's supposed to. Whether I think that's legit or not is whatever. But again, to me, it's like when I first got sober 11 years ago, I also dove right back into the evangelical church and was screaming from the rooftops. I cringe at my like memory Facebook posts from those days that come up in my feed.
Love it.
You know what I mean? It's like quoting Bible verses and like doing the whole thing. And I'm sure that I said some stuff that was not the gospel. Certainly, I know I said some stuff that I don't agree with today after a little bit more spiritual maturity, I think. So again, I take it, it screams to me like of a brand new Christian. Like this is stuff that a brand new Christian might say.
That's fair.
And I dig it. And so I'm interested to see where the next couple records fall. Right. And if it keeps being if we're talking 3 records down the road and it's been 5 years and he's still talking about God gave me a $60 million check from the IRS, then I'm like, whoa, bro.
If he still uses lines like closed on Sunday, you're my Chick-fil-A.
Right.
That's a flag.
Exactly.
To me.
I'm with you.
That is particularly a snide on like evangelical culture. And you know how many people, like old evangelical friends that I have, and I'm sure you have too, that were like, okay, but like Jesus is King, it's like album of the year. You know what I mean?
What's the
yeah? You know, I had a weird theory that I actually believed was a good chance to be the case, but now being a little removed from it, I think it was just fun to speculate. But I told Priscilla, and she was seriously like, "Oh my gosh, like maybe." But I actually was thinking that this album was possibly working ahead of the game to start getting an evangelical support for a 2024 run at the presidency.
My Lord. That's how Kanye's brain could work. I could see him thinking that.
Because listen, like, don't you think, now, I'm a little hesitant to say this, but especially with him wearing a Make America Great Again hat, but even with that, I think there would be a huge percentage of the African American vote that would just be like, you know, because if he does throw in his name, then he can start really just saying all the things that would really appeal to a liberal base. But he's kind of covering his bases now with the evangelical crowd. And I mean, Natalie, you're right. There's like a lot of evangelical Christians that are touting this as like, this is the best album ever. I'm like, go one album back and see what you think lyrically.
It didn't come out that long ago. Yeah.
It didn't. Right. It didn't. It was like a small project that he did before. But yeah, like now everyone is like, oh, cool. It's cool to be a Kanye fan again. Like, I'm not going to catch flack for this shit. And I'm just in the corner like, okay, but like his actual good albums though. Like, and I think the problem with like Christian labeled music or music that is specifically like geared towards a Christian fan base when it comes to like, I don't know, CCM or whatever, is it becomes a problem when the music suffers for the message, right? Which happens a lot. And in this case, I feel like the message suffered for the music.
Yeah.
Because the music is really, really good, but it's such a base level, like, understanding of the gospel that I'm sure, like, I don't know, it might make it easier to listen to because you think about it as, like, this is him going through it, this is him learning, and that's fair. But for me, I'm just like, I can't. Yeah. And I think it's just because I'm too close to it.
Sure.
Because the way that
Did Kanye West break your heart? Are we hearing you correctly?
Genuinely hurt my soul. Because I was rooting for that man for a minute. Like, for a whole minute. Especially because of the whole mental health thing. Because I have a friend who, like, is bipolar. And her and I were talking about him. And we were talking about, what's his name? Max Bemis, who also is bipolar. And he's the singer of Say Anything. But, like, even just those two comparisons, like, how one decides to, like, tackle and talk about his illness, like, with his music is vastly different from the other. And, like, the amount of responsibility they choose to take. Like, for their fan base. There's a line in, I think it's on Yeezus, but he says, like, or no, it is on the one before this one. It's on the short, like, EP type that he did before this one, where he says, like, bipolar is my superpower. Like, I'm not sick, I don't need to take medication, it's my fucking superpower. And I think that's super responsible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
Is the music great? Yes. Is he talented? Yes. Is he, like, low-key, high-key, the musical genius of our generation? Probably. But you got to take some responsibility, and I think that also comes into play with an album like Jesus is King.
You know, it's a drastic departure of how I was in my very legalistic days, but I think I'm at a point now to where I do enjoy art, I would say, at a deeper level, if also lyrically I'm kind of in sync with what that person is delivering. But I'd say in the last 10 years, I've just kind of been able to, and I'd say been able to, like it's actually a good thing. I think it's just me, and some other people are different with their styles and what they gravitate towards. But I've kind of just over time separated that person's approach and lyrical content and what they're about with the music, to where I'm just going to enjoy the music if it's good. Now, I will say an exception to that is, as big as a hip-hop fan as I am, the songs that they write that is start to finish womenizing and crazy, vulgar, sexual stuff, those songs usually get deleted. Now, obviously, you can't listen to, you can't be a hip hop fan if you're going to be sensitive towards one little thing that they say. But I don't know. I don't know. Anything I say right now, it almost makes it sound like, Natalie, I think you're a bad person. I don't mean it that way.
No, you're good. And, like, I get it. I get it.
Yeah,
I get that there's, like you can enjoy it at, like, a shallow level and that be fine. And, like, I'm like that with a lot of things. I think the only reason that I'm so, like, I don't know, jarred by this is because
because you're connected at a deeper level.
Really liked Kanye.
Yeah.
And I love God.
Yeah.
So for a project like this to be, like, just okay and or maybe, like, a scam really pisses me off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's just my opinion, and I'm not going to judge you for liking it. It's just, like, really hard for me, and I had a really, you could ask AJ, dude. I had a really hard time when this album came out, because my sister was like, dude, you gotta listen to this is fire, whatever, and her and I, we went to go see Kanye 3 years ago now, when he came through with Life of Pablo, and it changed my fucking life. Like, I love that show, I love that time with her, it came at a very important time in my life, it's a huge deal for me. So for her to tell me, yo, he's back, you gotta listen to this, I was like, oh, fire. And I listened to it, and I'm mad. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be mad.
No, all good, man. All good. I didn't know you were in Florida.
Yeah. I've lived here for, a while. I moved to Florida when I was 9 and then moved away for a couple of years. I've been back since like 2011. So gotcha. I think actually the only time that we've ever met in real life was in Florida. It
would have been at y'all's video release party,
yes,
like your documentary.
Yeah, at the State Theater, and we talked
and
for
there may have been a show that I don't know, in the last 5 years, were you on the road with Emery at all or played any shows with them? It seems like I've seen you twice.
Not that I can think of, no. But I know there was I think there was an Emery show that I came out to. I don't know if you were on the road with them or not.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I don't know. That stuff, it all kind of runs together for me. I'm really bad at I'm really bad at remembering it all.
Totally. What's funny is I got to make a quick confession, by the way. I just had some chicken wings with blue cheese, and blue cheese is supposed to be white, right?
Yeah, ish. I've seen the blue cheese with like the blue hue in it, and I don't trust blue cheese in general because I just see it as just a fungus, and I won't eat it.
Dude, I checked the date and it was fine, but then I should have used common sense because it had like a yellow tint to it. So as I was finishing up my wings, I really started to feel a little queasy. So maybe the first podcast that I ever throw up on.
I'll take it. No, I was working earlier today, and my daughter's like banging on the door to my studio. She's like, "Dad, you have to come here right now. This is very important." I was like, "I'm busy. Is it actually important?" She's like, "Yes, very important." And she takes me into the kitchen, and we had these tortillas. And again, she had gone to make herself some sort of a wrap, and there was like mold on the tortilla because who knows the last time we made like burritos or anything. And she was like, "Look," and I'm like, "So you know to like throw that away, right?" And she's like, "Yeah, but don't you have to see it?" And I'm like, "No, just throw it away. You're 10 years old. You should be able to take care of this yourself."
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, it's funny because people, when they talk about you coming on this podcast, because there's been a handful of people, and then finally someone, a listener and friend of mine, tweeted us both, and it's like, dang, that's all that had to happen for Chris to come on here and talk, just a simple little tweet. But people are curious. People ask, they really are curious about your health and your fitness. And what's crazy is I've always known you as super fit. Now I've seen pictures. Well, you look it.
Yeah, no.
But seriously,
yeah.
What was that journey like? I mean, was there just like a mentality shift, like just all of a sudden you're like, screw this, or was it? I know for me, when I hit my 40s, I was like, okay, if I don't change stuff right now, it's like do or die, because for the rest of my life, I will have to pay for what I'm doing right now.
And for the rest of your life, your body is going down.
Right.
Like your body's not naturally getting any better once you hit 40. So I mean, I think it's even that way once you hit like your mid 30s. Like there's unless you're working at it, nothing's getting any better.
You're how old?
36.
36. Okay.
Yeah. Right. So for me, it was kind of a culmination of things. One of them being I've struggled with since I was 9 years old. I remember specifically when my parents got divorced, we moved to Florida, and that was the first time that I realized that's the first time I can remember having a problem with my eating or like being overweight or anything like that. And I'm sure that if I, went to a therapist or something, they would track that all back to, my parents divorcing and all that. But so it's almost as long as I can remember, I've struggled with my weight, and through being in the band, I was on, I'd been touring all the time. Like I'd been on tour basically since I was like 18, almost nonstop. And being on tour for me is it's a lot of physical work. Like I get a lot of exercise. Like when we play, like I always come off stage drenched. I burn a ton of calories, but I was also eating like I was a third grader left at home by himself. So I was overweight. Like I was, probably when I was touring, I was in like 260. 265-ish. I mean, I'm 6'3", so it wasn't like insane, but Underoath broke up years ago, and we just stopped. Like we were like not a band anymore, and I went home, and I was just off the road for it was about a year that I was off the road before I really recognized that I had a problem, because I didn't stop eating like I was on tour, but I was not getting any of the exercise. My exercise was basically like there was, I look at it as like a boat that was taking on water, and that was my eating, and my exercise was just me with a bucket,
Right.
like trying to keep it at bay. So I didn't stop eating like an idiot, but I did stop exercising. And within about 8 months, I was right about 300 pounds. And it was just, it was pretty bad. And you always hear people talk about, oh, there's this like one light bulb moment. And I was on the toilet, and I went to get off the toilet, and my back went out. And this was I was right at 300 pounds. So I was on the ground in the bathroom. And that was just where I was like, this is stupid. Like, this is utterly ridiculous. And, I've got, at the time I had 2 kids. I've got 3 kids now. And I was just like, if I don't change something, it's just, similar to you. I was just like, I'm not going to be around long enough to see my kids do the things that they're going to do. And so it was all a culmination there. And from that point on, it was a years long process of just slowly working at it to get the weight off. Within about 3 years, I had lost about 95 pounds.
Gosh, you said 3 years?
Yeah, it was about 3 years. Yeah. Since then I've put on probably about 30 of that. Like my entire thing is like a big yo-yo going up and down. And it's always been a struggle. But I think what really helped out a lot was when I was not in a band, I had a very structured existence, which was very good for staying disciplined and motivated, because I was able to get up every day, do the exact same thing every day. I would get up, go on a bike ride. I would make my breakfast. Like, it was a very structured thing. But being in a band's a lot different because your schedule's all over the place and diet's all over the place. So it's a little harder. So I don't know. I'm still struggling with it. I don't know if I'll ever not, but I think that's just, I don't know if that's just my lot or not, but it's like, I know I'm definitely not alone in it, which I've heard a lot from people, especially since, I initially lost all that weight.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. I'm with you for sure. That food is my idol. And it's like, I'm always trying to, like, I have a horrible, horrible sweet tooth. I mean, just horrible.
Me
when
too.
I get up in the morning, that's what I crave. I mean, donuts and milk is just like heaven, or cereal with milk. I just love it. And so for me, keto is kind of the way out of that, at least for like transitioning back into a healthy lifestyle and kind of rid myself from that sugar-holism sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a real thing though, for sure. Like the way that the food is it's formulated to get that response. Like I heard somebody say it in a really cool way once. They were saying that if you want to call it an addiction, like if the addiction that you have to food, if you realize that a lot of that is on purpose, like the companies that are making these foods, they're making them high fat, high sugar, sodium, like everything that when you put it in your mouth, it's going to be like, oh, this is amazing. Like they're doing that on purpose. So if you look at it as something that's being done to you, it can almost trigger this like, yo, hell no, I'm not going to let somebody do that. Like, and for me, for a while, that was a really big help because I looked at it not as a weakness of my own, but as like a realization that this stuff is like, it's formulated in that way. Like I'm big on like, I don't like candy so much, but like baked things, chocolates, anything like that. I'm just such a sucker for.
Right. Totally.
And
I was thinking about it. I think the way out for me is just to never have milk in the house, because I'll seriously pass up a brownie. I'm like, if there's no milk, I ain't eating that. Hey, out of curiosity, did you ever pick up on people, strangers in particular, treating you differently? Like just in public, customer service? Like, did you ever notice, daggum, I dropped all this weight and people look at me differently or treat me differently, or you never experienced something like that?
I would say not as a whole, but there were times when, there were comments that were made, positive ones, when I, had lost the weight from people who didn't know me. just about the way that I looked, which never happened before. Like I was never the type of person that would get a compliment from somebody when I go out based on like, oh, you're dressed nice or you look nice. I'm just, I mean, nobody's seeing this, but me and you are looking at each other now. This is kind of like how I look when I go out. Yeah, there were a couple things here and there, but honestly, like it made me feel good. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. That's something I've never experienced before. Somebody just going out of their way to say that I look nice. So, but on the other end of that, I never experienced really anything negative. Like I didn't lose the weight and then say, oh man, like all these people have been treating me really shitty. I just didn't realize, you know, it was more so just like those, every now and then there was a little comment that was nice.
Yeah. Well, hats off, man. Keep fighting. I'll keep fighting.
Where are you at?
We'll do it for our kids.
Are you, you on the lower end of things right now? Or like you said you're doing keto?
So basically I was, well, I mean, I'll probably tell you more information than you're asking for. So this past fall and summer, like I crashed into like a major depressive episode. super bad, but I lost unbelievable amount of weight, obviously, and it wasn't healthy weight loss.
Was that just from not eating?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just not eating. And but I would say before when I entered into that terrible season of my life, I was in better shape, and then it was like took away all the fat and everything. And so as I got better, my appetite developed, and I still was eating pretty healthy, but I definitely was like, screw it for the Christmas holidays. And so now, like, and I think there's different dispositions to food. And I'm the type that if I let go for 2 or 3 days, I mean, I notice it. Like I can look in the mirror and be like, I notice that. And the bright side of that is if I'm on keto for 2 or 3 days, I notice weight loss.
Yes.
I mean, it really is like a quick switch sort of thing for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the same way. And my wife hates it because she has to like just struggle to even lose like 2 or 3 pounds. And like, for me, if I just stop eating garbage for like 3 days, it's like, boom, automatic, like 5 pounds gone. But it's just water weight, you know, because that's how that works. But yeah, my wife hates it. She's like, why is it so easy for guys to do? I can't handle it. But
man, I was thinking, I think today or yesterday, I was thinking about Underoath because this interview was coming up. And I heard, it may have been an urban legend, or maybe it's true, that and if it's true, I'm imagining that you and I have changed a great deal. But I think it was in 2004 at your concert, you guys were saying 4 more years. Did that ever happen at an Underoath show?
Not that I know of.
In fact, I think the Emory guys are the ones that told me that. And the crowds were pissed off. Maybe it was an urban legend.
No, maybe. That has never happened that I can remember. But the Emory guys, those dudes love to, like, I could see that being a story that those guys tell, be like, hey, you want to hear something crazy about Underoath?
Yeah.
Just to, like, where even if it's something that never got back to us, I love that they do that sort of thing. Maybe that happened at some point as a joke, but never like an intentional thing like that. Like, that was just not a thing at all.
So with your buddies in Underoath, I don't want to speculate here, and you know, it's just practical stuff. I see it as just observations as far as Christian faith is concerned. Are you the only one that is still a Christian, or that would say I'm a Christian?
No,
faith?
No, not at all. It is a more nuanced discussion now.
Totally.
You know, totally. Specifically amongst ourselves. You know, because me and James and Tim, we all go to the same church in Tampa. Gotcha. You know, Aaron is, you know, kind of in his own space where I think we're all just kind of, we have specifically over the past, you know, I'd say 3 or 4 years, you know, just kind of been reevaluating, like, you know, what we believe, what we don't.
Right.
And, you know, I think what I think is really good is that we're all taking our own path in that. Whereas when we were younger, it may have been more of like oh, okay, well, these guys in the band feel this way, so I also need to figure out how I can feel that way. So yeah, no.
Well, and there's also kind of like I don't know if you guys were kind of mixing in with evangelicalism, but there kind of is a very narrow way of looking at things when you are in that tunnel.
Yeah, and for the longest time, we called ourselves a Christian band, and that was at the center of our identity as a band, but kind of also as a group of people. But we had begun growing apart in that way a long time ago. Like, we haven't called ourselves a Christian band since like 2011. But even before then, there had been some things where like, hey, like, I've got these questions about, A, B, and C. And if I don't feel like I'm on the same page as you guys, can we stand on stage and say that we're a Christian band and have that not be a dishonest thing?
Right.
And that was the thing that we've always taken really seriously, is like, if we're on stage and we're saying something, we want to make sure that we're being truthful with it. And, it was back around 2011 where we had the discussion of like, okay, we can't say this anymore because we're all so varied in where we are in our lives and what it is that we believe, that if we say that we are like this unit that believes this thing, that's just a falsehood. So
totally. Yeah. Well, I mean, at the same time, was there a part of you that was just like, what's even the point of that label?
Yeah, I think that we had been in that. It sounds a little dismissive, but I guess we had been in that mode for so long. Like, I'd been in Underoath since I was 16, and we were a Christian band, and that was how we identified ourselves. So from 16 until, that was 99. So from 99 until 2011, I was just like, oh, this is just who we are.
Right. And I probably saw your band as like a ministry. I bet you all said that sort of thing.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I viewed it as like, oh, well, this is my ministry. This is what I'm called to do. So there was a part of me that's like, wait, so if we stop calling ourselves a Christian band, then what does that mean for me? And what does that mean for what God has for me? Like, should I no longer be a part of this? But, we had realized that for a while we were kind of calling ourselves that just because we always had, and it was kind of who people viewed us as, and we didn't want to try to keep up any sort of a stigma. So, totally. I think that's objectively the healthy thing to do, is just to say, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I know for me there is, but for you, is there any low-hanging fruit as far as your beliefs are concerned when it comes to pretty significant change? Like, if you think of Chris Dudley 10 or 15 years ago, compare it to 2020 Chris Dudley, what would be some things that people would be like, whoa, that was a big change there?
I guess the correct way, it would be correct to call it low-hanging fruit. Like, if I'm comparing myself to 10 or 15 years ago, like, I was very hesitant at one point for a long time to admit, questions that I had about the Bible, about God, like actually doubting God in general. I was like super afraid of that, because I had grown up in a church where, if I even really thought about doubting not God's will, but the fact that God was God at all, then that was a really scary thing. And also,
go ahead. I'm sorry. Like, even in the Bible, like, there's so much you're saved by faith, and so I was the same way. It was just like, well, if my faith isn't intact and I'm doubting, then that is like my salvation was totally dependent on whether or not I believe fully. And that's some pressure right there, man.
100%. And also, I was very like, I felt like I was always taking responsibility for more than I should. Like I viewed the way that my band was perceived as like a personal thing. I viewed how my friends, specifically the guys in the band, were doing spiritually as a personal responsibility. Like, I felt like I needed to keep up like with like Bible studies, and like if they weren't doing good, then I'm like, oh well, I need to like try to like fix it. I need to try to help them, that sort of thing. And after a while like that, that got really, it was a burden. And I also, I was also scared at the idea of any of my friends, going down a different path than me. I was scared for friends, because I had that fear of my own. Like if I had a friend that said like, hey, like, I'm not really sure if this is real. I'm not sure if God is who I thought he was. I'm not sure if the Bible is inherently literal, all these different things. So I took a lot on, and it got hard for a while. But then when I got to a point where I was able to have open discussions, initially just with the guys in the band, and be able to voice doubts, and to and for them to feel comfortable coming to me, because I had always had this reputation in the band as like the pastor-ish role, and
stay focused, don't backslide.
Exact 100%. So like the dudes would not want to come to me to talk about stuff, because they're like, oh well, he's just going to tell me to like get over it, or like pray about it or whatever. So once a lot of those bricks started coming out of the wall, it was a relief, honestly, and it broke down a lot of barriers that I had between me and the guys in the band. It broke down a lot of barriers that I had between me and people that I didn't even realize that I had barriers up. Where I've had people come to me since and be like, "Yeah, I didn't really feel very comfortable talking to you about like real stuff back then, because like I thought that you were gonna just preach to me, but now I realize that you're a real person and you have real things to say." So. Yeah,
totally. And it's funny. I hate all these labels and categories, and at the same time, I know what these words mean. And so I'll ask you this: do you still consider yourself, or did you ever consider yourself, an evangelical Christian? Like, I think that's kind of a subjective meaning, but whatever that means to you, are you that anymore?
I would say
You're like, shut the hell up, Joey. Leave me alone.
No, I would say that I did consider myself evangelical at one point in time. But a combination of my my change in how I think that God wants me to live my life, in the way that he wants me to show who he is to other people, a combination of that and just what that word has come to mean specifically within the past, 5 years, 10 years. I wouldn't consider myself that anymore, just because, I just don't think that's me. But no harm, no foul if, other people do. It's just, I don't think that's an accurate, description of who I am in 2020.
Well, what's crazy for me too is I don't consider myself that, and at the same time, I don't feel like the need necessarily to shed that label. I guess I don't really care, but
you're not the guy out there being like, "Hey, don't call me that."
Ex-evangelical sort of thing. Yeah, yes, totally. And I've got so many friends that they are right in that evangelical mix. They think and act and behave and see the Bible and see the world exactly how I used to 10 years ago. And I'm not saying anything and like they're less mature, I have matured. I'm just saying I see it very differently. And then I also have a lot of people with Christian faith that I can have these sort of discussions with, and it just, my gosh, that's been the most important thing for me, because I'm with you, man. It was a struggle for, I would say, a good solid 7 years. It was just like I couldn't get my spiritual footing, because I just, once you start questioning how you've always read the Bible, it's like, well, I don't know what to do with this. And I'm finally at a place.
Yeah, and for you, I would assume that it's doubly hard because you're a pastor during that time, and you're the guy that everybody's coming to ask about, that stuff. Right. So how does that work for you with, where you would consider yourself now with being a pastor?
Yeah. Well, it's funny as far as people coming to me, because I am I am constantly, so I work at a church where it's multi-site. So basically we pipe in a video message on Sunday mornings from the original campus, and then we have our own worship team, and I'll welcome everybody to a response time and all that sort of thing. But anytime I have an opportunity to teach, and then sometimes just randomly during response time, a lot of listeners know what that is, but it's basically after the message, people take communion and pray and do sort of sacramental stuff. But I really want to shed that mold of that guy is, and I was just talking to my sister-in-law about this yesterday. How pathetic is it that we think that there are spiritual experts, like there's some people that know how God operates more than others. And I am totally down with the pastoral role as far as someone being like, well, maybe I should go see a counselor, or maybe I should talk to my pastor. Or I totally get that, and I feel like that's something that I do really well is walking people through stuff. But as far as like the spirituality part, I hope there's a time and place where all pastors admit, hey, I'm on the same journey as you, and I'm happy to guide, but my guidance are things along the lines of, there's a lot of mystery out there. There's a lot of things we don't know. Man, when the Holy Spirit does do something in your heart that really does drive you to more faith, don't really know exactly how to read the Bible because God hasn't come down and told me, and you can't, pigeon, what's the word for taking one scripture and
cherry pick.
Yeah, you can't cherry pick a script. People always point to in Timothy, all scripture is God breathed, and when that was written down, the New Testament wasn't even established. So it's just like, so that's a big thing for me is I don't walk around with that sort of mantle, so to speak, and the people that come to my campus, they know that, and I think for a lot of them have told me, hey, this is the reason why we're a part of this community is because of your honesty with those sorts of things. And I would say, secondly, I probably would not be able to work at any other church with how I believe because they would not have me. I brag on Seacoast all the time, and I would say in the public realm, they kind of look they kind of look like a dime a dozen of all the mega churches, except we don't really have a celebrity pastor, and our teachings maybe are a little more laid back and practical. I don't know.
That's where you can come in, man. Be the first one.
Yeah.
Seacoast celebrity pastor.
Yeah. But I tell you what, man, behind the scenes, it is a very special place, man. I have communicated to my lead pastor and friend with where I'm at in my faith, and it is it is not in the evangelical path at all, and he doesn't even bat an eye. I mean, because to him, he knows Joey. He knows that Joey, like Jesus is very important to Joey. He believes Jesus is God. He believes in the Holy Spirit, and he loves people. It's like outside of that, what else? What else are we looking for? And so, and I also think Seacoast is a place that really does want to be critical to itself and break molds that are healthy to break, and really consider, hey, 2020 is a very, very different time. So, all these mega churches that were established in the 1980s, and it's funny because churches are still being started in that same mold. It's like, you got to start second guessing that stuff.
Yeah.
Man. Like what kind of church do you go to?
We go to a church in Tampa called Watermark. It's technically in Christian Missionary Alliance.
Right.
But they don't really adhere a ton to that. That's just kind of like, technically where they lie. But it's honestly awesome. We've been going here for a long time, and we actually tried to go to a couple different churches back years ago, because when the church was first starting out, there was nowhere for kids to go. And, that was just kind of logistically, it was kind of a hassle for us to go there, but all of our friends went there. We love, the pastor, and, we tried going to a couple different places. It wasn't working. So, our church finally got into a building, and we started going again. And that was years ago. It's been a long time, but it's great because like all of our people go to the same church. Like our friends that if we're not at church, we're saying like, hey, we're going to get together with, this family or this family. Like all of our favorite core people all go to this church. So it's great. And what I love is the fact that the teaching is very much rooted in here is when the scripture was written that we're talking about. Here's what was going on in the world.
Wait, context matters? Are you serious?
It's unbelievable.
Are you serious?
It is unbelievable.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And
I did not know that.
Yeah. And honestly,
I did not know that.
I think that they we get a bit of flack for that from some people because it's not a lot of feel good, preaching. It's like, hey, like this is, we make our way through a book, sometimes it'll take a year, 2 years, like to get all the way through a book, but it's like we go verse by verse. And, hearing that context, it's all about, for me anyway, I love going there, because it's our community, but also I just learn so much. Like almost every Sunday I'll come in, there'll be a scripture. And then by the end of it, I'm like, oh, I had no idea that, this was actually, they were talking to this people. And the reason that they use this word is because at the time there was this going on. So they were trying to like relate it to them and all that. So I don't know. It's awesome. I could go on, but like I said, me and Tim and James, we, in all of our families, we all go, and the pastor, Tommy, been friends with him forever. We hang out, and it's
That's awesome.
It's dope.
And you know what? At the end of the day, for me, the main reason why I am part of a church and lead a church is the people. Mm-hmm. I mean, when my family went through what we went through this past fall, I mean, it was our church family that freaking sustained us.
That's great.
I mean, we would not have survived. I mean, it's just, it's being a part of a community. Yeah, I was talking to John Mark McMillan on a few episodes ago, and he said something along the lines of, for people that say they don't go to church, there's no point in it, why does anybody mess with it? He made a really good point. He was just like, okay, well, show me something else then.
Yeah.
Like show me a different way to find this sort of, community and all that stuff. And I've thought about this a lot, and I do have some theories, but I want to hear, like, why do you think that it's so common? And even in the music industry, so many people just say, yeah, I'm not a Christian anymore. Like, I just don't have faith. I mean, why do you have any thoughts on why that is such a common thing? I mean, because I've heard, honestly, in the last year, quite a few Christians distraught by so many people they know, friends, family, that stop believing. Like it just seems like a trend.
Yeah.
Dare I say?
Yeah. I think a lot of it comes from, I think a lot of those people are roughly our same age, from mid to late 20s into late 30s. I think that's a age range of people that, like you were saying, like it's like every other day you hear about some person who was, did consider themselves Christian and don't anymore. And I think a lot of it has to do with the church that we grew up in, like as a whole, the American evangelical thing, that we were just talking about. And I think that from what I've seen from people that I know, so much of it came down to the Bible was supposed to be 100% literal and true, and there's no room for interpretation. This thing happened, and that's all there is to it. Don't question it. So that
we can figure it out.
And
that we can figure it out.
Exactly. And so when it came time to saying like, hey, like, I think that this Jonah and the whale thing, I think that might have actually been a story to get across a point that God wants us to understand. And then it was just like, wait a second. Well, so the Bible's not real. And then and then when you take that, I mean, it's that old analogy, but you take that one thing out of the wall and the whole thing just like crumbles. And I've seen that time and time again. And you realize that all the time that was spent in the church growing up, just trying to convince other people that we were not doubting and that, we had faith and that we believed and, putting on that facade because we thought that's what everybody else wanted to see, instead of early on saying like, hey, like this story kind of sounds like it didn't actually happen, or you know, I'm not sure if I believe in God, saying that at 10 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old. At a certain point you just give up, I think. And
I don't know if it was Richard Rohr.
It's a bummer, but
I don't know if it was Richard Rohr that said this, but I read recently, and I love, maybe it was Pete Enns, doesn't matter, I'll tell you. But basically, he said, I don't know if Adam and Eve story really happened, but I do know it's true. Mm-hmm. Like, so in other words, the story's true because the point isn't history, it's poetry.
Yes.
And it is definitely giving you truth. Yes. Whether or not it happened, don't know.
Yes.
And I love that.
And I
love that.
And I, you know, came to that realization years ago. I'm like, I don't care if any of that actually happened. I know what God is trying to convey through these scriptures, and I know that that's what matters. And, you know, it's a kind of an aside, but, you know, my wife, we homeschool our kids, and she teaches at our co-op. But she's in charge of teaching a course on the continents. And then she's like, okay, so we'll, you know, start with Pangea and we'll move on from there. And then she was like, oh, wait a second, I don't think I'm allowed to do that. Like, just getting into this whole, like, you know, this whole thing about, you know, the literal, you know, 7 days and all that. And some people, you know, they hold that real strong, hold that real tight. And I think that they might be in a position where they're afraid what their worldview would be if that one thing is not exactly as the way they thought it was, you know? So, and it's understandable, you know?
Absolutely.
Exactly. I have too. That's why I totally get it. And I try to have those discussions with people and say like, hey, like, you know, if they ask me about, you know, what it is that I'm going through or what I think about any certain topic or spiritual thing, I'm just like, hey, like, I don't know, but, you know, here's what I think, like, through the things that I've gone through, like, here's kind of what the way I view it. I might be totally wrong. Here's what this guy says. Here's what this guy says. Here's what the Bible says. But I really don't know. I'm just trying to figure it out. And I think that, you know, I think a lot of problems with Christianity, specifically in America, would be solved if people were okay just saying, I don't know, but, you know.
Right.
So
I don't know, but let me love people.
Yes.
That'd be a good start.
Yes,
that'd be a real
exactly.
good start. So I did some snooping on your Twitter profiles, and I wanted to know what a VR evangelist is. And that may make me really stupid, but I don't know. And then I did, before we wrap this up, I wanted to touch on seeing what kind of stuff is going on as a composer for film.
Gotcha. A VR evangelist just means that I want everybody to use VR. I just
what's VR? I don't know what VR is.
Virtual reality, like these things. Yeah, that's me. I'm that nerd.
Gotcha.
I mean, I could really.
Yes, I did just tell everybody I'm really stupid.
Yeah, no, I could go on forever about that topic. The reason I have that in my Twitter profile is because so many of the people that I interact with and follow on Twitter are in that space, you know, working at different companies that are working on different VR projects. And I'm just really, I don't know, I since about 2013, I've been pretty neck deep in that whole world and getting to know the ins and the outs of it. And, you know, I don't know if it's as interesting of a discussion to people who aren't tech nerds, but, you know, I just think that it's the future of computing, and I think that it's going to solve a lot of problems that we currently have, specifically related to social media. And I'm really excited to see the hardware kind of get adopted more widely, and have more people use it. Because I mean, just on the social media end, like, I think the inherent problem with social media as it stands now, and why we're having so many issues, is because it's not inherently social. Like, there's not a social aspect at all. It's, you know, if you look at Twitter, it's like I'm typing something and I'm sending it out, right, and I'm waiting for a response, and then I'm typing a response. Like, that's not a social exchange, and even Instagram, I'm putting a picture up and then I'm responding to comments. That's not a social thing. But
so what do you mean by social? Because it does seem like people interaction.
So it is a form of interaction, but I would not view it as a social interaction. And I only realized that once I experienced what a social interaction is in VR. Because in VR, I don't know if you've ever actually done it, but there's basically I could have a headset on, you could have a headset on, and then in this virtual world, I am at a table sitting across from you. So when you get up and you walk to the other side of the room, I actually see you walking to the other side of the room. Like when I turn my head to the right, I hear you out of this ear as I would if I were sitting across from you. I can see like your hands, I can see your head. I have, an approximation of where your eyes are. So it's
you may need to come back on here and talk more about that. That is so intriguing.
It really is. And it's one of those things where when you do it, you're like, oh, like this is what this has all kind of been building to. Like it's an actual, I'm sitting across from a table from you and we're having an interaction, we're talking, and not a social media quote unquote thing where I'm throwing out a thing to the wind and people are just like saving it and then coming back 10 years later and throwing it in my face.
What would be tough, because my listenership knows that my mind always goes to sex because it's very dirty, but what would be really tough is if you're sitting across the table from your wife and you're like, gosh, I feel like I'm in the same room with you, but but I would assume that there will be a solution to that as well.
Oh, there already is. That's a whole other discussion. But no, there definitely is.
Cool, man. All right, so film, and then I'm gonna treat Underoath fans to a little 5 popcorn one word answers. But I want to hear about film.
Film stuff. I'll make it short. I've been composing film scores for the past, it's been about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years now. Movies just take so long to get made that the stuff that I've been doing, it's only now starting to see the light of day. I'm actually taking a break from doing a film right now. That's been crazy rewarding, crazy hard. Honestly, like the learning curve is so steep. But it's been something that I've wanted to do for a really long time. And I just, one day I decided I was going to do it and took some steps. And now I'm like doing it. Like every day that I'm not doing something Underoath related, I'm doing something film related, which has been it's been crazy. It's been really, really cool. I'm super happy.
That's awesome, man. Very cool. All right, so you Underoath fans, you're going to thank me for this one because we're going to go into the whole silly question thing. But here's the thing is everybody makes fun of me for this kind of stuff, but then the fans, they eat it up.
I don't even know what's coming. So
I'm taking care of my listenership. All right, so here's what I want you to do is you don't have to rack your brains out as far as like who your absolute favorite is, but one of your favorites that comes to mind.
Okay.
Actors or actresses.
Tom Cruise.
Food.
Cereal.
Music, as far we'll just say bands.
Guns N' Roses.
And what Underoath band member are you most similar to?
Tim.
And then lastly, kick-ass possessions or kick-ass travel?
I'm gonna say kick-ass possessions. So I don't think that's
explain.
That's not the popular answer, and I don't know if it's necessarily even the right answer. But I have traveled so much that I don't view travel as much of a vacation as it should be. Like because I travel for work, like when I'm home, I'm like, oh, great, awesome.
That's your break.
Yeah.
And you probably want to buy all this virtual reality stuff.
Yeah, that stuff costs money, man. It's not cheap.
Yep. Chris, man, this was fun. It was great catching up, man. I appreciate you coming on here.
For sure, man. Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.